All right, guys. I'm having some technical difficulties with my camera, but what I wanted to do is lecture the rest of chapter 22. So we just have a good hold on that, but I also have my test right out in front of me. So this is going to be your test review video. It's going to be very thorough. So make sure you definitely have notes out and that you stop the video as I go through. I'm going to start with chapter 21. I'm going to go through the test questions on chapter 21 as we kind of review what you guys can expect. And then I'm going to pick up with 22, what we talked about on Monday, what you should have taken your notes on Tuesday when I was out. And then I'm just going to finish it up. I'm also going to post the videos um, from chapter 22 because when I go through the PowerPoint, we can't watch the videos together. You do have test questions covering a lot of those videos, like the Harlem Renaissance video, the Red Summer video. There's a video on the Scopes trial, and you have a question about that. And then there's also a video on Marcus Garvey, where you have a test question on. So watching those videos are going to help you so super much. All right, so let's get started with review of chapter 21. So right out of the gate, make sure we understand with the Spanish-American War and the ideas of imperialism. All right, so remember up here, McKinley, remember he's pushing for the Spanish-American War. His pride's kind of hurt because of the De Lo May letter. Let's not forget about that. You have a test question on how he and President Cleveland differed in handling the Spanish in Cuba. Okay, so go back to the PowerPoint, make sure you understand how they're not seeing eye to eye on everything. You're also going to have a question on the Spanish-American War on how like it played out. This whole idea of, we're in Cuba, right? Everything's in Cuba. But if you really start to like scope out the aspects of the Spanish-American War, was it really about liberating the Cubans, right? I want you guys to know like the territory that we got during the Spanish-American War. I want you to know where the first battle was and why that was significant, because you got a test question on that one as well. Okay, and remember, anti-imperialist sentiment is growing. They're going to be very happy when we get to the peace treaty, the Treaty of Paris that ends the Spanish-American War. You have a test question about that too, because anti-imperialists were just so sick of us at war abroad. Why? Why were they like, were they really concerned about, the people abroad, or what was really on their mind? So you have a test question about that too. Okay. Um, you have a question on how we got Hawaii. So make sure you understand that's associated with the Spanish American War. You have a question on Teddy on the Roosevelt corollary, extending the Monroe Doctrine. Um, so in that PowerPoint, go back and look at how it's extending, but how it's also, hitting Latin America and policing backwards people. So I took um, a segment from the Roosevelt corollary as well for the test. Okay, another thing with Teddy, and I'm going right in order on our review. How did we get the Panama Canal? So if you want to enable that PowerPoint, if you download it and click content, you can figure out, the whole story. You're going to need to know the story for the test. So just make sure you know, like, the French come in and they try it, and Teddy's like, all right, now it's my turn. So what does he do? How does he get the land actually to build the Panama Canals? What the question's about. All right, moving forward to Taft, you're going to have some documents that you have to read towards the end of the test. So make sure you understand what dollar diplomacy is. There is a video in the chapter 22 PowerPoint and the chapter 21 PowerPoint, and, the definition. So make sure you understand what dollar diplomacy is all about. You have a question on John Jay and what open door policy means. It's kind of a key termy question. You have a question. Oh, now we're into World War One. Okay, so now we're done with the beginnings of imperialism. And now I have a question on World War One. Make sure you know why we want neutrality, right? And I think I told you guys that already. Make sure you know why we want neutrality. Make sure you know, you do have a question about what was kind of going on in Europe, but it really affects the United States. And it's on the same slide where I have the 3 reasons why we're going into the war. So if you look at that slide, there's worldwide competition for lands abroad, and it's going to shake up Europe, and the United States is going to get involved. So look at that slide. Everything that's bolded and underlined, you're going to have a test question on, okay? Oh, you have a question on the Zimmerman telegram, so make sure you know what that is. And well, actually, you have to know all the causes. I'm sorry. You have to know all the things, the 3 things that pulled us in. So make sure you know all the things, the 3 things that pulled us in. You're going to have a question associated with the posters on chapter 21. So one poster was really amazing because it was uniting groups of immigrants, but the other poster was ostracizing a group of immigrants. So look at that slide, make sure you know what's going on with there. You have a question concerning the Sedition Act of 1830, or I'm sorry, 1918. Make sure you know the Sedition Act and what it really is doing in World War One, but also what it's doing in the Red Scare. So you're going to see it kind of twice. Remember, there's this idea of, are we questioning constitutional rights, not just in times of war, but in other times of conflict? So you have a question on that. All right, now I'm into chapter 22. So officially in chapter 22, and I'm going to kind of meander around the PowerPoint. Oh, wait, no, you have to know the 14 points. Backtrack. You see all these things, 14 points. You have all the following except question on that, and you have a question on Article 10 of the Treaty of Versailles, which was concerning how the League of Nations was going to be assembled. So if you go back to the 21 PowerPoint, make sure you know all the things in the 14 points and make sure you know what Article 10 is about because you have a test question on Article 10. Okay. Have you supplemented? Well, you better because I've been gone for 2 days. And if you're not supplementing, you're not going to be being successful. Okay. I'm not going to play this video for y'all because it messes with when I upload it to Schoology. But you definitely have a question concerning the Great Migration. So you need to know like the definition of the Great Migration, but you also need to know in chapter 22, because you have another question on it, what, veterans are coming home from World War One and what are they seeing, especially African American veterans. So you have a whole video on the Red Summer. I really want you guys to see just how discrimination is playing a role, not just in the Deep South, but all over the country. Okay. Race riots are ensuing. And really, why? Like, why is this going on? And we talked about that competition between work and housing is really bad in this era. Okay. Moving forward, you will have a question on the Red Scare. You see this like bolded and underlined? It's a real key term question. So if you know the key term of the Red Scare, you're going to do absolutely amazing. And then you have a question about Sacco and Vanzetti. So not really the story, but just how historians have analyzed it throughout the years. We're not quite sure that they should have been executed. The trial, it's kind of lengthy. Like the arrest happens in 1920, but the actual rendering of the case isn't until 1927, really. And it's just really this ongoing battle of whether or not we believe they got a fair trial, right, in the midst of what's happening in the Red Scare. And let's not forget, like the Red Scare is prompted on foundations of, anarchist bombing, but it's also prompted on massive amounts of immigration, right, from countries that are, war torn and have a history with anarchy and socialism and communism. Okay. All right. You have a question about women and some of the good and the bad and the ugly that are happening with women. Make sure you know all the key terms that are in red because, yes, you have your key terms on your test Friday. So all of the key terms from chapter 22, just make sure you're prepared to have those. Make sure we understand that women are not voting as a bloc. So that is really important. And other things in politics. Let's keep going. Warren Harding is campaigning on a return to normalcy. I need to know what that means. It's right here in the slide. And I need to know how like Hoover, his Secretary of Commerce, Hoover is playing a huge role because Hoover is giving us our laissez-faire of the 1920s. And the laissez-faire of the 1920s is voluntary cooperation. You know, it's businesses are replacing regulation with it. And it's just really important that we understand like what that means. And it's hands-off approach that we're going to have all these great laws, but are we actually doing anything? So again, the 1920s, y'all, is just such a like Gilded Age 2.0. But you still have people like screaming from the rooftops of, you know, for progressivism. That's where like welfare capitalism comes in. Calvin Coolidge is going to execute this in his presidency as well with not using antitrust legislation. So there's no antitrust enforcement going on for Woodrow Wilson. Teapot Dome, dollar diplomacy. Again, I'm not showing those videos because it always messes up with my copyright. Hopefully it won't mess up when I try to upload this. So again, you have a question on dollar diplomacy. Just make sure you understand like what it means and how Taft is using money to really just kind of manipulate what's going on in Latin America. He doesn't want foreign investors coming into the region. It's an extension of the Roosevelt corollary, this whole policing of backwards peoples. Because, you know, if we're not going to do it, somebody else is. Moving on to the Scopes trial. Oh, I hope that doesn't mess up my video. The video is going to help you so much understand what's going on. I'm going to skip over prohibition for just a second here, but in the Scopes trial, just make sure you know who's defending who and just like what the case is all about. Okay. And the video is going to help you do that. So I don't want to go into it too much on my review video. I want you guys to go seek that video yourself. Just make sure you know the ACLU is bringing about the charges to defend a teacher who was teaching evolution in schools. William Jennings Bryan, he is the prosecutor. Clarence Darrow, who's the most famous defense attorney in the age, is defending the right to teach evolution. And the teacher is actually found guilty, but the appeals court in Tennessee actually overturns. So all of that I just said, incredibly important, but please watch the video. Getting back up to culture wars in prohibition, just make sure you guys know that the 18th Amendment isn't just prompted by the temperance movement that women had been fighting for a long time. It was also prompted by drinking German beer, and that we're making the manufacture, the sale, and the transport of alcohol illegal because, you know, alcohol overall after World War I is considered unpatriotic. Okay. So moving forward, we have an expansion of the KKK in this era, which is causing a lot of things to happen. The Red Scare and the Great Migration is causing for legislation to limit immigration. Coolidge is going to say America must be kept American, and he's going to issue the Natural Origins Act. So overall, what y'all are seeing and what I'm going to ask you guys on the test is what are we seeing resurge here? We saw it in the 1820s, we saw it in the Gilded Age, and now we're seeing it in the 1920s, right? This idea of we don't want people coming into certain parts of the country, or shall I say groups of people don't want others coming in. So if you know, remember that key term, just this idea of having others coming in for job competition and housing. And in the Red Scare, we see it with immigrants bringing anarchism, communism, and socialism, but we also see a rebirth of the Klan due to the Great Migration. Okay. So you can see here just how widespread this is and how governments are entangled with the Klan. Woodrow Wilson and Coolidge are both going to have massive campaign contributions because of Klan assistance. And you can see in Hoover's election, which we're not going to get to the precursors of the Great Depression. I'm actually going to save that for our next test. But this is the one thing that is different, not the Gilded Age, right? We're not seeing such tight elections here. We're seeing overall landslide victories in this age. And I'm going to skip through the Harlem Renaissance video. Definitely want to watch it. So you have a real like key termy question about the Harlem Renaissance. So just knowing what it was And this idea of Black racial pride and just the emergence of music, literature, sculpture, paintings. I mean, art form takes on so many different forms. And in the video, it really talks about how Black culture is for the first time being recognized. And this is going to be a huge step in the right direction for the civil rights movement. Okay. You have a question on the UNIA, two, actually, because one, I'm putting it on your key terms. Okay. Um, and another you have like directly in your test. So just making sure you know who Marcus Garvey is, this idea for political action and what they want to do, what his whole goal is. Marcus Garvey has a goal. It's going to be in the video. I want you to watch again. I'm going to post these videos. They're really short, you guys. They're not long. They're like 3 to 4 minutes. Watching those videos is going to help you get these test questions correct. Okay. So you have to know Marcus Garvey's platform, what he's pushing for. And Pan-Africanism, you're going to have that on the quiz portion of the test with your vocabulary. All right, Marcus Garvey, moving forward. Art form. You have the lost generation in your key terms portion. So just make sure you understand this, the group of people that fought. Gertrude Stein is going to push the lost generation. You've got the Great Gatsby. I'm not going to go into the Great Gatsby just yet because I actually took it off your test. We'll talk about it in our next chapter. I know not everybody in lit is dumb or is done, excuse me. But it did criticize the pursuit of happiness and pleasure and wealth. And I think you guys are already seeing that. So I'm not going to go like explicitly into that. All right, last section of chapter 22. From boom to bust. We have this huge boom because, again, it's the 1920s. I'm going to talk more about the roaring 20s in the economy in the next chapter because it's all precursors to the Great Depression. And that's what we're going to study next. But making sure we know what consumer credit is important because that's on the vocab portion. We're not going to see an agricultural boom, but definitely coal and textile or coal and oil industries are booming for sure. Monopolies, really oligopolies are thriving because remember, we're voluntary cooperation. Herbert Hoover is pushing voluntary cooperation. And it's essentially like, hey, businesses, if you want to follow our regulations, you can. But most of them are not going to. And you're just going to see the economy running amok and massive consumerism because of consumer credit. This idea of, paying in installments is really going to run the country into a lot of trouble. Okay, soft power in the automobile. You do have a question about the automobile and the automobile industry. So just make sure you understand that because of Henry Ford and the creation of the automobile, look at all of this mass production that's happening just because of the automobile. Okay. So by the end of the 20s, 80% of the world's automobiles are going to be in the United States. So in a decade, we're going to not just manufacture automobiles worldwide, but everybody can afford them and everybody's going to have one. It's going to be insane. It's like Stanley Cups, right? Everyone has one. So the growth and support industries, you're going to see massive stimulating of prosperity. The steel industry, petroleum, rubber, glass, it's going to cause more of building of the suburbs. It's going to hurt the railroad and it's creating new leisure. So all of these things that I have this equal signs, like memorize this right here because you have a test question on it. I don't have any test questions on Hollywood or the flappers, but they are on your test because they're key terms. So making sure you know them is very, very important. Okay, so I'm at the end of the test and I have some documents that you guys have to read. Most of the documents are just requiring you to read and understand what they're saying. There's a poster at the end of chapter 21 where you have a guy shaking the hand of a German general, and it's in Plot Alley. So that's actually the exact same one that I have on your test, and I have some questions about it. Just make sure you understand, like, it's 1917, so we're obviously in the era where anti-German sentiment is really big. And this case is directed towards those in war industry. So, those people that are hanging out in business are really interested in German spies and the Red Scare and all those things that it entails. Okay, you have another document that you have to read. Really, it's the platform of the American anti-imperialism. So make sure you know those people that I mentioned who are anti-imperialists. Also, make sure we know like how happy they're going to be because of the end of the Spanish-American War. Some other things we talked about anti-imperialism is just the focus on domestic policy, right? They're wanting that. Like that's the goal. They want peace abroad because they want to promote domestic policy. Okay. Um, Make sure we know John Jay's open door policy. That's going to help you with the documents. Make sure you know Roosevelt's gentleman's agreement and his corollary. Make sure you know Taft's dollar diplomacy, and make sure you know Wilson's Jones Act of 1916. Okay. You have, that's it. Yeah, absolutely. That's it. Okay. So this was your test review video. Very long, but incredibly thorough. I went through all of the things from chapter 21. I went through all of the things in chapter 2 that you're going to be tested on. Hopefully, fingers crossed, my daughter is better by tomorrow and I can reiterate a lot of these things on the test on Thursday. If not, it's going to be okay because you guys have everything you need to be successful on this test. Okay. So all the videos in the chapter 22 PowerPoint are going to help you tremendously with test questions. You guys know how I start and stop those videos to help with understanding. Try to do the same thing for yourselves. Make sure you know all the key terms for chapter 22. Why? Because it's just the best way to inflate your grade for this test. Okay. So my video is not working. I'm going to stop share and end. Y'all prepare, do well, watch this video as many times as possible. If you're using the Google Doc to try to be successful on tests, I'm going to go ahead and already tell you doing it on your own first is the best way to go about doing that. If you show me a digital copy of the Google Doc and wanting to retest, I'm going to turn you down because I have access to it. I know what it looks like. Please, please watch this video. Please take notes on your own. If you do that, you will likely not have to retest. But if you are going to request to retest, just know that I'm going to want to see those review video notes before I send you the retest information. Okay. So I know you're going to do well.